So I'm working with Genesis, and we just purchased 5 Vermont centers back. So for the 4 that we had, I did 4 individual applications and was the owner of the process. But for the 5 centers that we bought back, it's a little bit different for each one, where they are in the process of the application and how they filled it out. They did it, or wherever they are in the process, they did it with an old tax ID number. Now they have new ones. Is there a point person or somebody that we can work if, or how we go about returning the check, or even if we're halfway through the process, you know, resetting up an account? I'm not sure what we're supposed to do. Everybody's somewhere in the process.
Yeah, I'd say the easiest is for the people who are not through the process. We could obviously work with you, get a new W-9, get you reestablished in the system. So those are the easiest. For anything where the business has really need to get our business office involved and may have to, as you noted, return a check, get a new grant award letter and payment out. So I think if you just use the general email box, you'll get Sean and myself, and we'll work directly with the business office on the various, as I said, we can handle the ones that aren't through the approval and payment process. The other ones will engage with our business office on.
Okay, perfect. So I'll just send them to that email box. Okay.
Yeah,
thank you.
That'd be terrific. Yeah, thank you. And I'll just add or reinforce what Wendy said. Even for folks who are through the process, it's not a problem. It's just extra layers of complexity. But that question did come up earlier. I think in the earlier Q&A sessions, maybe it might have been with with Genesis, Jennifer. I'm not entirely sure. I don't remember which company it was with, but we did ask our CFO there, and they said that the proper way to do it would be to close out that grant, reopen a new grant. So there'll be some steps, but nobody will be losing any money. They'll still get the full grant either way.
Thank you.
Want to go next to the one in chat? I could read it. I might ask you to field it, however.
Sure.
So it says, can we count hours that our field staff work at home to start their day and end their day, or only the hours they are in the field? This is not true remote work from home, as they are preparing to work in the field.
Yeah, I think to that, we understand the preparation. I think it's not necessarily true remote work. However, still, I think there've been a fair number of questions here around kind of, is this hazard pay, or is this different? What's premium pay? And I think from that, to answer kind of at the broad level, these questions is that with the federal requirements, it is in the broader hazard pay bucket. So that was a piece we wanted to reinforce in the last FAQ for a couple ways. I think one piece, which we haven't played up as much, and it's not directly related to this question, but it reminded me to reinforce it, was that some people have asked about the $25,000 cap, and kind of what period is that for? Is it for the per year? Is it per since this April 1st time through next June? And actually that 25,000 is throughout the entire premium pay programs related to here for the Fed. So if people got a couple $1,000s in the hazard pay program, and then they get $3,000 during this premium pay program, they've used up $5,000 of their $25,000 they're allotted. Again, we haven't made a big deal of that, because just with the nature of the numbers, the most people could have gotten out of the hazard pay program, and the most they can get out of this program, even if being allotted at $2,000 per FTE, acknowledging that some companies that have some higher paid employees who will be ineligible, companies that have high vacancy rates, you could see that individual employees getting a fair bit more than the $2,000, maybe getting $3,000, maybe getting $4,000. I'm not sure. A lot of you are the the CFOs and know your exact number, so we'll have a better sense of that than me. But I have a hard time seeing that getting up into the, into the five figures. But I wanted to reference that here just because it's under that broader spectrum of premium pay for hazard pay programs related to the pandemic. And where that comes into play here, I think would be even if they're at home starting their day, even if it's preparing to go out, into the field, really where we asked those questions about the lines of business and where the facilities were, whether they be an office or a provider's office, or for shared living providers in situations and in homes there. Those are really the work locations that are eligible. So it wouldn't be the time spent at home. I see taking here. We'll flip over to the hands. Sorry, just while I have the chat up. Sorry if we're not going in the proper order here. Wendy and I needing a facilitator here for us. But we asked, Sarah asked, can you talk about any of the ideas for promotion of vacant positions if we send information to you? So one of the more immediate pieces would be looking at doing a press release announcing the grantees for this program, and so that would be a place we're doing some earned media around that press release, getting some attention. We know it'll be a hook of when the funds going out. Certainly that's a side that people expect and may have questions from the state on, and really being able to tout all of you as grantees, and then being able to tout ultimately what the money's going for. So that press release is one piece. And then I think as far as other types of earned media, once we have that in place, whether we can put things out through social media, towards working with the other departments here within Agency of Human Services and the channels they have. Certainly open to all of your ideas too, if people want to use some of the time either to put in in chat, or if you have social media channels or other means to promote this, we're open to that as well. But that's the initial thought. I don't know if Wendy, if you wanted to add anything on that, or jump to whoever was next in line.
Yeah, why don't we go to one of the folks who raised their hand? So I have Leslie Addison, or I'm sorry, my handwriting's terrible. Leslie Addison, I believe is next.
Hi,
Thank
Sean.
you.
Hi, Wendy. I'm from United Counseling Service. And my question is if you could clarify the service commitment, because it reads that the employee receiving an award must commit to employment at least one calendar quarter following receipt of the payment. And it says the payment. So if you elected quarterly payments, it's no longer the payment, it's multiple. So does that mean that for each payment they have to do another 3 months, or does that mean the 3 months gets reduced because it's now a quarterly payment?
I can take this, and Sean, you can tell me if
Yeah.
you disagree.
Yeah.
I consider that the receipt of the first payment. So they're agreeing to accept a payment or multiple payments. In return, they're agreeing to a service commitment of 3 months. So I don't think you have to, if you're making those as monthly payments or quarterly payments, I don't think the statute, which this language is from, is requiring them to continually make a 3-month commitment upon receipt of each check they receive.
Thank you.
Sean,
Yeah, I
please
think
weigh
the-
in if you disagree, but.
Yeah, no, the piece, not a disagreement. I think just a clarification or an add-on, I would say, was that, with the statute, it was also clear of saying it at least 3 month, really. So we've talked a lot about the discretion that you as grantees, as employers, have within the bounds. And granted, there are a bunch of bounds from state regs and federal regs, but within the discretion you have is to go higher than 3 months if you want as an employer. So if you want to have people sign on to commit to work an additional 6 months in order to get a payment, that's something that you have the discretion to do. Similarly, if you're taking that quarterly payment and you decide you want to have people sign on for 3 months to get that first payment, then sign on for another 3 months to get to get the second, that's something that would be within your discretion to do. But I certainly agree with Wendy that from a program compliance side, from that base level, making that commitment of at least 3 months is all that's required from our side.
Take one questions now. This one reads, I thought we asked for a lump sum payment, but since we received just a third of it so far, I assume that means we are getting it in 3 parts. This is great as it turns out, but can I pay the premium pay for existing employees now, but reserve the rest for people we're trying to hire and pay them later? I guess I'll say like 2 things on this. One, I'd love it if you could send me your application number or name so I can make sure there wasn't an error in the payment. But given that you said that this is positive, I'm I'm hoping to answer the second part of the question to explain a little bit more about how the quarterly payments are working. So we are individuals, organizations that have selected a quarterly payment. The first payment we're issuing is a third of the total grant award. What we're going to do is have reconciliation after each quarter. So if you spend that total 1/3 of the payment, you'll get another third the next quarter, and so on. But this is going to be reconciled to actual expenditures. So if you ended up spending 50% of the award, even though you only had reserved a third of it, we'll give you more in that next period. So in that next quarter, so you'd get your 1/3 payment plus the additional expenditures that you made, despite the fact that you hadn't received the check from us yet. So I think your question's getting at, can we spend more perhaps now, and then over the 12-month period that I'm allowed to spend those dollars in, use some of that out quarter money on recruitment and I'd answer that question as yes. And just you can get more of those dollars earlier if you do decide that you would like to make, not spend maybe the whole award, but if you want to spend more than 1/3 at a time, you're welcome to do so.
Yep. Yeah, and I'd just add in, right, I think agreeing with what Wendy said, but really there being almost 2 parts to that question. I think one is, as Wendy answered it, is sort of that rate of, of disbursement of the funds. As Wendy says, yeah, you could put more out the door. And as Wendy says, the way that reconciliation process will go is you will get more of that. You won't have to be waiting till next, June to be made whole. But the other part of the question, as far as where I read, at least, and maybe this is just my perception of where it was in chat, where you said paying the premium pay for the existing employees and reserving the rest for people trying to hire and paying them later. If that was implying that if in, say, your next quarter, you are only going to pay the premium pay to work performed by new employees, not give premium pay to people who had been working, say, in the summer, which you had your initial reference period of people being paid premium pay for hours worked, say, July through September, and then have another piece that where you exclude those workers, but have workers who were newly hired. I just wanted to call attention on that side. It could be that side could be a little problematic. I just called attention, popped up the expanded FAQ we put up a couple weeks ago, and with the question 8, one of the pieces really with that goal of the broader federal hazard pay requirements is general guidance that that employees are taking on a similar level of hazard, performing identical tasks and duties, should be getting a uniform compensation. And so I think to that end, if you were giving premium pay, if you had that initial reference period, then you have a subsequent reference period, say for people who work in November and December, and you set it up that way too, so that you could pay new employees I think if you had new employees who were doing identical tasks and duties as existing employees, those existing employees should still be eligible for that and treated similarly for that second reference period. So to Wendy's points, kind of agreeing that you can set it up differently. You can have set up multiple reference periods in order to pay people soon and to have kind of that carrot for potential employees. But and you could set up a bigger lump sum. You could front load it, you could back load it, depending on how you wanted to do it. But at least for those particular reference periods, you'll want to treat everybody comparably.
Read the next question, or I know Jenna, you raised your hand and also wrote a question.
Oh,
So maybe
yeah.
I'll read the question, and if you want to jump in with anything else, you can. I see that it's regarding the office-based work. Is premium pay still eligible if office-based employees are providing services via telehealth versus seeing clients in person?
Yeah, you want me to take that one? Wendy,
Sure,
or-
that
I'm
sounds
sure. Happy to, yeah. So Jenna, on that one, if people are doing telehealth from the office, again, back to the, well, maybe I should have flipped it up here. If you find the PowerPoint presentation we had from last time, where we talked about the 3 tests that folks have, and this test 2 was really, it was explicit that it's not teleworking from a residence. So I think you're safe there, being office based, and then 2, that it involves that regular, in-person interaction. So they're not interacting with patients in person, but presumably because they're in that office setting, they have another coworker somewhere around the building and interact with them. So yeah, from that read, I would say you're safe.
Great, thank you for that. Can I switch to a different question?
Of course.
And maybe if you don't address it now, if there's time to maybe walk us through an example of receiving a payment, so a quarterly payment. It sounds like maybe there's a look back period to make sure that employees who are hybrid remote, I would need to calculate what portion of their time they're actually eligible, which if they're not yet tracking that, if we have to start having employees tracking the percentage of time that they're seeing, that they're either in the office or seeing patients face to face in the field, I probably can't look backwards. I need to wait to start tracking that now, track that for 3 months, and then use that as the measurement period for the payment, I think is what I'm understanding. And I'm a little fuzzy on how the $13 piece plays into this. I'm not quite understanding that.
Sure. So yeah, Wendy and I can take a crack at both of those, the
Thank you.
$13 piece and the broader piece for how it comes into play. I think, and Wendy can chime in or add to your first question component there, as far as whether people need to actively track it. In my mind, I think you'd want to be able to demonstrate that there were the eligible hours and the time. If an organization has clear cut and consistent telework, hybrid policies. I know a lot of organizations, maybe are on 3 and 2, or 2 and 3, 40% in the office, or 60% in the office, and 40% from home. And maybe if folks are in the field and with shared living providers, I'm not sure how that works. So I think I'd look to a lot of you for what your exact personnel and work policies are. But I would think that if you have those clear personnel policies and somebody falls in them, it doesn't have that exemption, then it would be could be pretty clear cut. I don't think you would need to stand up a whole new program for tracking people's hours if you'd be able to demonstrate that people work in the office, 40% of the time at a minimum. And where that comes into play for the $13 per hour is that people's $13 per per hour is the maximum people can get for premium pay for eligible work. So again, as we talked about those tests, that time working from home isn't eligible for that $13 per hour. When we back it out, as I kind of referenced earlier, just most people don't have to worry, most organizations aren't going to have to worry about that $25,000 cap, even lumping together these multiple programs. The $13 per hour is pretty high as well. And it feeds into why we set that April 1st start date of that reference period. Was really twofold for setting that April 1st. Number one was to allow if organizations wanted to really focus on that retention side, get money out to employees soon after receiving it. Some of you may already have. We don't know. But if you did want to get it out in July, since it had to be for work performed, and you got your funds based on that April through June period, and when you map out over a year, if it's $2,000 per FTE, people are working roughly, full time would be roughly 500 hours a quarter. So people who were fully in the office, even if they were just being paid just on that quarter, the $2,000, that's what, $4 an hour just for that quarter. If people are getting more with vacancy rates, or if you have a lot of people who are more hybrid or working from home, and you're working 50-50, maybe that $4 goes to $8 then, right? You're still safely under $13. If you have a lot more of eligibility, or depending on how you're paying those funds, and $13 does become an issue, maybe you'd want to have a longer reference period instead of based on April to June. Maybe you pay them April through September. If that's not an issue and you want to use it more as a hook for recruitment, you don't have to use that April through June period. You could have your reference period be just August and September. Again, if you're just looking at that tighter window, then maybe you want to look to see, and if you really have people who are working a majority of their time, then that's where you'd probably either want to look at lengthening the reference period, or maybe doing more tracking, or specifically trying to target the pay towards the hours that people have in the office, or which certainly would be in line with the intent of the program to give higher allocations of the funds to people who are experience the higher hazards. But not sure, Wendy, if you want to add anything to that.
I don't have anything else to add.
Okay, all right. Thanks. And just on this topic, not directly, but we'll jump in. I'll also just point out the question after the one I referenced on the expanded FAQ was that someone had asked whether you could kind of give a larger bonus to overtime hours compared to regular hours. And that was a piece that we confirmed as well with the federal guidance there, that would be consistent, that if the employers deem those overtime hours to warrant that additional compensation, again, it should be consistent across employees who are performing identical tasks and all those kinds of things. But if they wanted to give more premium pay for the overtime hours, that would be something you could do. And also wanted to call out on that overtime issue. There were some questions that came up last time as well. As far as if you're giving it for regular hours, it's important to note that that gets considered off of the base compensation for people. So that is a situation where folks could potentially be bumping up over that $13 per hour cap is if you gave it for base compensation and people were getting a lot if you had a short reference period, high vacancies, other things like that, that those dollars you were given get factored into a higher base pay, which then if they're working over a lot of overtime hours, that time and a half, if that base pay is over, what's that, 8.50, somewhere, yeah, $9, that, then that time and a half is going to be over $13. In that case, it would still be a $13 cap. So funding would have to be used from outside of this grant to pay for any amount over that $13 in the case of those overtime hours. So again, to kind of step back, if that's something that some of your organizations are worried about, the options again would be to spread out the reference period so that there's a fewer dollars per hour being paid out, or you could go this option of paying a higher premium pay for overtime hours, which would avoid high dollars for the base.
The next question is, what will be the state reporting requirements for the use of funds, and when will this need to be completed by? So I'll note two things. What will be the state reporting requirements? We do intend to be releasing information, and we'll have another one of these town hall opportunities to be able to communicate those and be able to answer questions. So those are forthcoming. But I will note that we will have reporting due dates based on quarter. So if you elected a single lump sum payment, you have 90 days to spend those, and we'll be looking for a report after the first quarter. For all other entities that have requested quarterly payments, we will have quarterly reporting, and those are needed to do the reconciliation to calculate the next quarter's payment. So as I mentioned before, it's either a third or it's over or under that, depending on how much was spent in that quarter. So those are approximately like 15 days after the end of the quarter is when they're due. And you'll be getting email reminders. We'll be communicating that. But we really need to be able to get that reconciliation from you so that we can issue the next payment. So that's why the deadlines are really sort of close to the end of each quarter.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Wendy. And actually, the next question from Elaine probably is a good segue from there. Just asking, can we give employees lump sums over the year rather than X dollars per paycheck or per hour? And the answer to that, if I'm interpreting it right, is yes, you can. I think within the bounds of a few points to call out. Number one is as Wendy referenced, that 90 spending within 90 days piece. So if you took the lump sum payment over the course of the year, I guess would become over the course of the next 90 days. You could give them a lump sum at the end of July, a lump sum at the end of August, and so forth. It wouldn't. And as we think we've talked about in some of the other sessions, that it's really up to you and your payroll. We know some organizations were talking about having a separate check cut to employees, whereas others were talking about having it be incorporate, same paycheck, just a bonus within their paycheck. So those are options there. And the last caveat I would just point out when you say rather, even so, that's the physical manner of how it's physical or electronic, right? However it's paid manner of how people get the money, but still ultimately in that sense of that $13 test is still, is still at play, like giving somebody a lump sum of $2,000, say at the end of August, if they were only in the office, one day over the reference period, wouldn't fly. Like it wouldn't, that loophole wouldn't hold there. It's still that $13 hour per test and reference period still comes into play. even though the actual manner in which you pay people has flexibility.
Okay, the next question is, if we got an award and requested full payment, when payment? I'll note for a number of applicants who had all of their who had their applications reviewed and determined complete in late June, we did issue payment. We have been working through with a number of organizations, just information to update our payment system, issues with W-9s or summary reports of FDEs. So we're still working through a number of those. We expect another set of payments to go out this week, which would be the first award for applicants. Can't tell you the exact date on that because we're still our payment team has been working through closeout, and so sort of waiting for the next budget to be in place. So those are coming imminently, and then we'll have another payment file go out hopefully next week. But we are also just really working, trying to get the last remaining information or documentation from each of our applicants, so we really can get those first payments out, because we really want to get those out to you.
Great, thanks, Wendy. And I think Lorraine, you've had your hand up a little bit. We can flip over.
Yes, thank you so much. So my question is about the basis for the calculation, in that we are understanding you can back out fringe as part of the expense. And so we're wondering what, if there are any guidelines around what's a permissible fringe rate to back out. Because 13% is probably what we would use for something like this, with taxes and pension and things like that. So that's one question. But yeah, we'll start there.
Yeah, so Wendy, I think on the details there, we can follow up with our business office potentially on that one. I can say what I know, and if it's inadequate, we can follow up. But so I think for what we know, and I think as we've referenced, I think in some of the FAQs, and I think you already get, because you're not asking the next level, is that anything that's a direct expense, again, in pay, is intended to be that the payment for the extra work, the compensation to the employees. So as you're referencing those fringe benefits, are that compensation, grant funds can be used for them. Whereas indirect cost, administrative costs of paying out the premium pay and so forth can't be. Grant funds can't be used for those, and there couldn't be, say, a 10% like cut, which I know is not what you're asking. So you're asking the percentage of right across what that, of if it's 13% or what you use. So my instinct would be what you use from the budgeting purpose from your organization. Presumably you'd have backup that's the norm, and that's why that fringe percentage is used. So I think that would work, but I'm certainly happy to follow up with our business office to confirm that. And Wendy may have other, I don't know if you have other thoughts, Wendy.
I mean, your answer makes sense to me, given that not everybody has a pension plan that would, pull those funds out if staff wanted them to be matched and so on. So I think that, but anything else you have to shed light on that would be helpful. And then my other question is, I think you're referring to some slides, and I'm just wondering if you can send those to us, the slides that you're using or you're talking from.
Yes, absolutely. Well, actually, what I'll do is I'll put it right into the chat. Is our on our homepage here, so everyone can access just on the AHS humanservices.vermont.gov website. There's that link to the recruitment and retention. It just disappeared there. But if I will show folks right now as well. When you go from the Agency of Human Services, and I am sharing, right? Everyone can see.
No, I
Or-
can't
oh, you're
see,
not.
but
Oh,
maybe
okay.
somebody else can.
Oh, okay. No,
Yeah,
Okay.
there we go.
is it? Okay, great. Sorry about that. So this is the AHS website, humanservices.vermont.gov. There's the premium pay for workforce recruitment and retention link right there. When you click here, there's the opportunity for folks we're still following up with if we find duplicates or W-9 issues or anything else, and you have to log back in to upload something, you can do so here. And below that, where we have the program documents, is the program guidance manual that we referenced. We updated on July 12th. I can take folks on there if you'd read it before and don't want to know, we have this version history right here, so you don't have to reread the whole thing to find out what's new there. The
Yeah, that's,
FAQ.
yeah, I was just going to say that's helpful because it looked like what you were referring to was different than what I'd seen before. So
Okay.
that helps.
Yep, absolutely. And the slideshow, so just down below under additional support is that slideshow from June 27th was this deck here. So you can access that under additional support, and the FAQ, as you say, right, those yellow highlight parts are new on the FAQ for applicants and awardees. Is right there. We should also point out, and if you want to speak to Wendy, that we added the FAQ on the impact of premium pay on eligibility for public benefits. I'm not sure if can't remember if we spoke to this in the last session or not.
Yes, so this is an FAQ that's specifically put into plain language so you could share it with your employees. It answers questions about if I agree to this service commitment and elect to receive this premium pay, how could it impact my public benefits if I receive them? So there are resources in here so that people can call Vermont Legal Aid or the healthcare advocate to understand how that might impact if they receive public insurance or purchase insurance through the exchange. It also tells you if people are receiving certain services from the Department of Children and Families. For some services, a single lump sum payment would not be counted towards income. So it speaks a little bit to that here. And also that language has been added to the program manual. So you can see that there, which is sort of employer facing, or you could share this information with your employees. And I think, again, the most important part of that too is the resources available so they can receive help from someone in making that decision. And those are in that FAQ document.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Wendy. Yep, and as Wendy referenced, that's exactly the update here. The section 12 is the new section from the guidance there. See a couple questions here in chat that Jane said to confirm we can use more than a 3-month period to calculate hours worked. That's exactly right. You have that window from April 1st of 2022. So this past April through either the end of the public health emergency or next June 30th, 2023, whichever comes first. And the public health emergency isn't going to end anytime soon. So you'll definitely have more than that 3-month period to calculate hours worked. Also see Stephanie's question about, is there going to be another opportunity to get more or ask for funds in the future? I think broad question there with future and pieces. I mean, I know there's a lot of workforce and other programs going on. There's not kind of an immediate concrete piece. This particular program, there was a funded in statute. There were two components. This first component designated for all of you and your employer types, and had a second needs-based piece to be open to other segments and other types of providers potentially. That second round is still being worked out. More information should be released on it later this summer. It would be communicated, but likely that's more broadly to employer types that weren't included in this round. So having said that, there may be other opportunities. We know the workforce challenges aren't being fixed immediately. We know we're certainly in this for the long haul with all of you. What exactly that looks like, I think, are issues that I'm sure will be discussed by the legislature and the administration in the coming months, and certainly in the next session. And one of the things that we really appreciate your work doing appreciate in advance the work with the reporting, the quarterly reporting, and the closeout reporting. We'll be able to give that data to hopefully show some of the impact that these grants had. And anytime you can show positive impact of grants, it increases the likelihood that there's more opportunities in the future. At least that can be all of our hope.
And Sean, I'm going to ask you to answer the next written question, but I'll read it. So, to be totally clear, we can pay the same people doing the same work, different amounts per hour for different reference quarters, so long as the same people doing the same work are paid the same extra per hour in each reference period. So I take that being like you have a cohort, you're paying them $10 an hour extra in quarter one. Could you pay that same cohort $5 per hour in quarter two?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. The answer is that. Yeah. So I think that's a great question. Really appreciate you articulating it that way, Elaine. And read it twice seemed like a little bit of a tongue twister, and we realize that's not on you, that's on us, and well, or on the federal requirements there. But yes, that's exactly right. I think for the purpose of, particularly those organizations, that those of you that took the quarterly payment option, you have, that's part of your discretion. You can see these almost as separate and distinct premium pay programs that you're operating, within the bounds. And again, those guardrails are, that you're spending those funds, that you're not going over that $13, per hour for any, particular hour, that, that you're being consistent with people doing that work. So I think, right, exactly the way Wendy gave that example, or as you're saying, you could have essentially your program A this summer be, this group is getting $5 per hour to work, then have your reference period. We're doing a reference period in October through December. We're paying them $3 an hour premium for that. Absolutely.
Looks like Jennifer Whedon has her hand raised.
Yes, for the 90-day payout, if you receive the lump sum, is that based on the date of the check? Because there's the approval letter, there's the date on the check, there was an invoice date on the check.
Yes, yeah, it would be the right, the date, it's the date the funds are remitted. So it wouldn't be the date of your approval letter. It would be the date on the check, right?
Thank you.
Same page, Wendy.
I
can
think so.
confirm
I'm
that
not
if
sure
we
if we
need
have
any.
that clarified anywhere, but we can clarify that
Yeah.
and put it in one of our documents on what
Yeah.
that 90 days is from.
Yeah.
But I would agree it should be from receipt of payment.
Yeah. And we'll take that to our business office along with the fringe benefit. As long as we're bothering the business office, we'll stack them up on them, and like Wendy says, add them both to the FAQ.
Great. So Jane is asking, is there wording for the attestation employees will need to agree to and sign, or should we speak to our legal counsel? I'd note, I think we've been asked if there's something we would put together and share as an example. We haven't done that yet. We would perhaps not write it in a way that says that each organization may want to with their employees. So I think what we were thinking might be a better approach is if there's organizations that have drafted some and would like to share them as a sample, we could certainly share and say, yes, we agree that these ones meet the requirement, but we hadn't intended to sort of write that attestation for you and require the organizations to use that.
Great, thanks. And Lorraine, I see you have your hand up.
I'm so sorry, I hadn't put it back down. You took care of me.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. Oh, yeah, no worries at all. So we see Vicky has a question to confirm if we pay someone $5 per hour, is the calc of the max, is the calculation of the max of $13 divided over 90 days? So I'm not, let me try to answer that. And if I'm not interpreting it right, you can let me know. So if you're saying you're paying someone $5 an hour, it's, yeah, so the max is $13 over whatever the reference period is. So if you're paying someone $5 an hour premium pay for each hour they worked using that reference period of, say, August and September, then it would be that August and September period that you calculate the hours that they worked, and you paid them that $5 an hour. As we discussed before, if they're paid bi-weekly and they get that $5 times number of hours bi-weekly in their check each time versus at the end of September, you look and say this is how many hours they worked in August and September and multiply that by 5 and give them that many dollars as a separate check. That's fine either way. That's up to you. But either way, you'd be compliant because the because that premium pay you paid them of $5 per hour of that eligible work is underneath that that cap of $13. So if that 90 days doesn't come into play in any division there, it's really just over the reference period and the hours they worked.
At this point, I'm not seeing any additional questions in the chat or hands raised.
If anyone has any, we're happy to take them. If not, we've used almost the hour. So it's up to all of you. If you think of others after, let us know.
Are we able to extend the pay to our MAT teams? That's a question I'm seeing. The employees who receive the premium pay have to be sort of within those eligible employer types. So if the organization has a number of business lines per se, and those business lines are not within that eligible employer type, then I would say no. I'm not answering specifically about MAT teams because I can't on the spot indicate if they are within one of the eligible employer types. I'm not sure if they'd be in the ADAP preferred provider network, for example. Could take that offline, but I will indicate if they're not employees within the business lines of those eligible employers, and those are in the program guidance, then they shouldn't be receiving the premium pay.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, Wendy. And that actually is a good reminder. Glad that question came up to indirectly remind me before we went. Was that in addition to employees, it's important to note, and as we've discussed before, and we know that employees, that the applicants included shared living providers, even if they aren't employees per se. They were specifically called out in the legislation and in the application. So applicants included the SLPs in their FTE counts. And of course, the expectation is that those shared living providers would be paid out as part of the premium pay. That's why they were why they were in there, but we wanted to explicitly call out that loop, and we can reference that as well. But so thanks for indirectly reminding me, Vicky. Well, I'm not seeing any other hands or questions either. We can give people a couple minutes back to be on time for the 1 o'clocks. And again, we'll follow up with those questions on our business office, and we'll post this video as soon as we can. So much.